Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Kris. Sorry, lost power yesterday. And so every time that happens, the recording software gets reset. So I have to adjust everything. So if I seem off color-wise, I apologize. It's a pain to have to redo it. And even if I take a picture of it and I set it right back to it, it seems like it's not the same. So I went by a picture this time. Doesn't seem right. Like it's the same. All right, it's like 6:30 in the morning, Sunday morning. Got my coffee. Before we get started, this is Battle of Shiloh, 1862 American Civil War documentary. Bare minimum, if you can click that thumbs up, helps me out. Subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Click on the thanks button if you want to keep the channel running. Shiloh battlefield was the second battlefield I went to. I went to it in 2019. I went to James K. Polk's house. Drove seven hours to Polk's house. Stayed there for about 2.5 hours. Then drove, was it 2 hours? South to Shiloh battlefield. Only got to stay there for 2 hours. It was, man, I feel like I look like I'm awful bright. Anyways, so went to Shiloh, gave myself like 2.5, 3 hours. Should have learned from Gettysburg. And then I had to leave and drive across Tennessee to Chattanooga because I was had a hotel and I was going to stay the night and then go to Chickamauga battlefield in northern Georgia the next day. And it was so much, I just didn't give myself enough time at all. And that sucks. But I was interested in Shiloh because, coffee. I was interested in Shiloh because this is the first battle that Grant was kind of in complete control charge. And I was reading the Grant book at the time. So I apologize for all the talking. I'm going to break this up into 2 videos. I've already checked. It's passed. So we'll break it up about 14 minutes or so. All right. Sorry for all the talking. Let's get into it.
In Hebrew, Shiloh is a word that can mean a tranquil or peaceful place, which is a bitter irony considering that the Shiloh Church would witness the first great bloodletting of the American Civil War. The Confederacy was reeling after losing the border states and Middle Tennessee in early 1862. However, its western armies were far from beaten and launched a series of counteroffensives during 1862, successfully stalling the Union's advance. However, their gains were fleeting, and by the end of the year, the Union had fully regained the initiative. In our latest video on the war that divided the American nation, we will explore the dramatic confrontations at the battles of Shiloh, Corinth, and Stones River. Every week, we release 3 new exclusive videos for our series of test those. Thank General Albert Johnston, allowing us to continue doing our dream job. General Albert Johnston of the Confederate Department of Mississippi was under considerable pressure following the loss of Forts Henry and Donelson from not only Union forces but also Confederate politicians. Tasked with defending territory many times greater than Joseph Johnston's Department of Virginia, with far fewer soldiers and resources, he'd made hard but unpopular decisions. Evacuating Kentucky and Middle Tennessee was strategically necessary, but economically and politically disastrous. Nashville was a major rail hub, gunpowder factory, and food producer, and it was also Tennessee's capital. Its loss crippled the Confederacy's logistics and economy, while severely undermining its legitimacy. Governor Isham Harris understood and agreed with Johnston's decision, and Jefferson Davis defended him, but many other politicians denounced him as a coward. Johnston didn't publicly respond. He knew only a victory would silence his critics, but his prospects were dismal. He had about 30,000 troops available to defend Corinth, Mississippi. The crossroad of 2 major rail lines, Corinth controlled all the supply lines to western Tennessee. If it fell, Memphis would have to be abandoned. Worse, it would render all other rail lines west of Chattanooga worthless and open Mississippi to invasion, and the Federals knew this. Meanwhile, Department of Missouri Commander Major General Henry Halleck was busy using Brigadier General Ulysses Grant's victory at Fort Donelson. He immediately recognized Grant as both an important asset and as a threat to his own ambitions. Grant had considerable field command skills, but lacked political acumen or ambition. Halleck had never actually led troops, but had considerable political acumen and ambition. Knowing that Lincoln only valued the former, while Grant didn't understand political maneuvering, Halleck moved to advance his career while keeping Grant at heel. Halleck recommended Grant and several other subordinates for promotion, while arguing that he should command all Western armies as the most senior general outside Washington. However, Lincoln only promoted Grant. Shortly thereafter, Grant went to Nashville to confer with Department of the Ohio commander Don Carlos Buell about attacking Corinth. By the most technically narrow and strict definition, this was abandoning his military district, a marginally court-martialable offense at worst, so Halleck used the excuse to suspend Grant's command. Halleck was just asserting dominance and quickly restored Grant, but he also protected Grant. Rivals had dredged up Grant's past alcoholism and were accusing him of misconduct, including drunkenness and looting. Halleck lied to the press that the suspension was for an investigation, which turned up nothing, and the accusations went away. Grant never learned Halleck's real intentions, as expected, and actually thanked him for the help.
I think Halleck Grant was a rival. Halleck wanted to kind of chop him down at the knees a little bit, take him down a peg or two after his victory, but then at the same time realized, I have an avalanche in Grant, a guy who, once he gets going, he just goes. He doesn't stop. If we want to win the war, we can't sideline a guy like that. And I think if Halleck thought that Grant would fight the war and then go home to Illinois to be a tanner or a farmer, he hated being a tanner, but to be a farmer where he was just like, I'm only doing this because I'm trying to save the country and then I want to get back to my life. Halleck might have treated him a little differently, but because Grant was he was Grant. He was difficult to read in terms of political stuff. He just didn't have that ambition at the time. But you couldn't read that. It's like Eisenhower during World War and after, during World War II, and after, he kept saying, I'm not politically ambitious. He was, but that was the right thing to say. And so in a way, Grant, I don't really think had any political ambition. He did later on when he felt like he could do a better job than the guy who's in there now, Andrew Johnson. But I think had he not been such a force, Halleck knew he needed him. And any battles that take place in the West and Grant is pulled off and it's a loss, that reflects him through Lincoln's eyes. And eventually Halleck could get replaced. Well, if he's replaced, that's a peg down for him in a potential political desire. So he has to keep himself front and center by keeping someone like Grant in the service. It sucks that it's such a political, they're political appointments. It just sucks that politics has to get into it when it comes to war like this.
Meanwhile, Halleck's department continued winning victories. Samuel Curtis secured southwestern Missouri, while John Pope cleared the southeast. Following Pope besieging New Madrid and Curtis's triumph at Pea Ridge, Halleck again asked for Western command. While his involvement was only on the logistical and administrative side, Halleck's department was the only one actually doing anything. His ability to find fighting men and keep them fighting was enough for Lincoln to agree to give Halleck command of all Federal troops from Kansas to Ohio on March 11th. Halleck believed that Corinth was as vital to the Confederacy as Richmond, and scouting reports indicated that Johnston's army was under-equipped, under-strength, and demoralized. Therefore, Grant and Buell would link up at Pittsburgh Landing. Halleck would then bring reinforcements and lead the combined overwhelming force to Corinth as quickly as possible. But reports were wrong about the last point. The retreat from Kentucky had been demoralizing, but Johnston and his second-in-command, PGT Beauregard, successfully restored morale while working on the other deficiencies. 15,000 men under Braxton Bragg were pulled from the coastal defenses to bolster the Army of Mississippi. Earl Van Dorn and the Trans-Mississippi Army were supposed to join them, but it was still reassembling after Pea Ridge. By early April, it was clear to Johnston that even if Van Dorn made it, the Federals would greatly outnumber him, and his men still had outdated equipment. Therefore, Beauregard advocated attacking first. According to Nathan Forrest's cavalry, Buell still hadn't reached Grant, and his camp wasn't fortified. If they marched their 45,000 men quickly, they could surprise and overwhelm the 40,000 Federals at Pittsburgh Landing before Buell arrived. In Beauregard's romantically inclined mind, a surprise attack would let them drive the Federals all the way back to Bowling Green. Johnston was skeptical, but it was better than the other options. Grant hadn't fortified his...
He didn't really like any of the options, but he had to pick from the best of all the terrible ideas.
Camps because he always focused on what he would do to the Confederates, not what they could do to him. Grant's orders were not to let the men get comfortable in camp and maintain offensive spirit through drill. 5 divisions were sent to Pittsburgh Landing on March 11th, while the 6th guarded the supply depot at Crump's Landing. The Green divisions under William Sherman and Benjamin Prentiss camped in rougher conditions around Shiloh Church to help the raw recruits acclimate to army life. Grant himself headquartered in Savannah, Tennessee, for its telegraph lines. Grant expected Buell to arrive by late March, but Buell didn't even begin marching from Nashville until then. Neither he nor Grant felt the need to hurry the march. The Confederates marched out of Corinth on April 3rd, intending to attack on April 4th. The 20-mile march would have been easy for experienced troops, but Johnston's men and officers were green. Consequently, the march was confused, inefficient, and slow. It wasn't completed until dusk on April 5th. Beauregard lamented that Buell had to have arrived by then, surprise was lost, and the attack should be called off. Johnston refused, stating that he'd fight if they were a million. The reality was that retreating after such a march would cause mass desertion and lead to all the general officers being dismissed at best. However, the Federals weren't aware of Johnston's advance, despite Pickett's reporting rebel activity. Forrest's cavalry had raided the area recently, and Grant's division commanders assumed he was back. Grant only alerted Lew Wallace, believing that Forrest would attack Crump's Landing. In fairness, Forrest was back, but was only scouting ahead of Johnston's advance. That night, Grant wired Halleck that he didn't expect an attack, while Sherman and Prentiss told their men there was nothing to fear. However, Colonel Everett Peabody was worried. The woods were too noisy, yet also too quiet, and pickets were sighting rebel scouts. Something wasn't right. Thus, he sent out 5 companies to patrol the Shiloh woodland at 0100 and put the rest of his brigade on alert. At 0500, Peabody's patrol ran into Confederate pickets in Fraley's cotton field. The ensuing skirmish forced Johnston to order a general attack at 0530. Fatefully, Johnston ordered Beauregard to remain at headquarters to direct reinforcements and supplies, while he rode forward to direct the battle. By then, Peabody had raised the alarm. Prentiss furiously thought Peabody had provoked a battle against his orders, until the rebels' organization and determination made him realize that Peabody had actually disrupted a major attack. William Hardee's corps reached Sherman's camp at 0700, while Bragg's corps made contact with Prentiss at 0730, having taken 2 hours to get organized and fight through Peabody's brigade.
If you've ever seen Grant on the History Channel, the 3-part series, it starts off with the Battle of Shiloh. And then it goes back in time, and it comes back. But there's two Union pickets, and they're just kind of standing there, and they're looking into the tree line, and the camp's behind them. And one guy is just kind of, and he hears like a stick break, and then I think it's like a little something like that, and he's looking around, and all of a sudden it's a long shot off that guy's left, and it passes by him to somebody else, and you just hear a gunshot, and that guy just flies backwards. It's just a great, smoke starts pouring out of the woods from all the shots, and that kid starts running. I think he's grazing the ear, and then you see him sitting there, and a horse comes up, and he looks up, and it's Grant on the horse, and Grant goes, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "And you fight?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Good." And, starts rounding everybody up, and he's like, "Let's give him hell today." And then they take off. And it's such the Grant History Channel one is so good. So good. I want to watch it again today. But there's movies on TV that there's documentaries and stuff that I have to watch because I keep telling myself I got to watch them. But I own it, so I could watch Grant anytime. But it's so good.
Sherman didn't believe he was under attack until bullets grazed him and killed his orderly. Finally realizing the situation, he rapidly organized his division to resist. The other 3 Union divisions shook themselves awake and moved to support Sherman and Prentiss. In response, Beauregard ordered Leonidas Polk and John Breckinridge to the attack's flanks, widening the line to envelop the Union flanks. Back in Savannah, Grant was sitting down for breakfast as Buell's lead division arrived across the river, when the sounds of battle drifted downriver. On crutches after a riding accident, Grant limped into action, ordering Buell's men to keep marching along the east bank and cross at Pittsburgh Landing. Grant then hobbled aboard a southbound steamer, stopping at Crump's Landing to order Wallace to get marching. Pittsburgh Landing was in chaos when Grant arrived around 0900. While as a whole his army was fighting fiercely, thousands of Green recruits had panicked and run at the first sight of the enemy. Even veteran units had fled after being overwhelmed or running out of ammunition. Reorganizing the cowering men into new units, Grant began building a new line on the ridge south of Pittsburgh Landing. Sherman was leading the defense on the left flank, but was gradually pushed back past Shiloh Church and then Crossroads. Similarly, Prentiss fell back until he and 4,500 troops reached an abandoned sunken wagon road around 1100 and resolved to make a stand. Meanwhile, the Confederates had their share of chaos. The dense woods, brush fires, and gunsmoke ruined unit cohesion, and thousands of Green Confederates were fleeing, just like the Federals. Johnston tirelessly rode up and down the line, encouraging faltering units, while Beauregard rounded up stragglers and sent them back into battle. The Federals on the left and right were pushed back past Prentiss's position, remembered as Hornet's Nest. Grant ordered him to hold at all costs, and Prentiss complied. Johnston spent 2 hours unsuccessfully assaulting Hornet's Nest as the Union flanks began collapsing. At 1400, he was hit in the thigh while riding ahead of Breckinridge's troops. It appeared a minor wound until Johnston slumped and nearly fell from his saddle. His popliteal artery had been severed, and Albert Johnston bled to death at 1430.
He was shot in the, it was like in the knee or something like that. And he had a boot on. And so all the blood was pouring out of his, like behind his knee, running down into his boot. And when they took the boot off, it was just nothing but blood. So no one knew how bad the injury was, or maybe that he'd even been shot, other than I'm sure he felt it and knew there was pain, but they didn't realize how bad it was. And then he slumped over and they ended up taking that boot off, and it just poured out blood. It was hundreds of gallons of blood, I'm pretty sure.
Davis later lamented that this was the moment the Confederacy lost the West. The gunboats USS Tyler and Lexington arrived and bombarded the Confederates to cover retreating Union troops. Only Prentiss held his ground, and Beauregard sent 18,000 soldiers to end him. However, the attacks were uncoordinated and piecemeal, allowing Prentiss to hold out until 62 cannons were concentrated against him, blowing apart the natural cover. A final assault forced Prentiss and 2,200 troops to surrender at 1730, as the rest escaped. At 1800, Beauregard halted the attack. His troops were too exhausted and disorganized to make the final push against Grant's breastworks on the ridge, though he expected to finish the job tomorrow.
Not only expected, he wired Jefferson Davis like the day is ours, victory is in hand, or something like that. He just took it upon himself that, yeah, we've got this. And it was like, it's day one. I understand the excitement, don't get me wrong. And I would have probably wired like, hey, look, day one is ours. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But I wouldn't just assume we got him. We got this. I got it. We're good.
During the night, Lew Wallace and 2 of Buell's divisions finally arrived. Wallace had gotten so lost on poorly marked roads that a 2-hour march took all day. Grant's men rested and reorganized, while Beauregard slept in Sherman's tent, though his troops didn't, as heavy rain arrived while the warships Tyler and Lexington fired into their positions all night. Some officers advocated retreating, but Grant refused. The army was reconcentrated and reinforced. They would attack at dawn. Forrest discovered this during the night, but failed to find and warn Beauregard. Dismissed by other Confederate generals, Forrest disgustedly predicted, "We'll be whipped like hell." He was right. At 0500, Grant and Buell's 45,000 troops attacked along the whole line. Beauregard had only 20,000 effectives left and was steadily pushed back to his starting position. At 1400, the Confederates began with...
And I believe the starting position here to like up here is, I want to say it was like a couple of miles, maybe up to 5 miles. There was a big push back and forth on that battlefield. I mean, this is like 2 miles maybe. It's much bigger than you would think in terms of the ground lost on day one by the Union and won again by the Union on day 2.
Withdrawing and abandoned the field by 1530. Grant's infantry was exhausted and he didn't have the cavalry to pursue. However, Sherman unsuccessfully attacked Forrest's rearguard the next day. Both armies suffered around 10,000 killed or wounded, with another 2,885 Federals and 959 Confederates captured or missing. Only 12,000 were killed or wounded across all major battles during the first year combined.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Butchery near Savannah. 20,000 dead in a single day. Yeah, this was the bloodiest battle at the time. This is where I think Grant knew this wasn't going to be a short war. This is going to be pretty brutal. And I want to say, they didn't say it, but I want to check. Oh my goodness. Can we just stop? I want to check if it was day one. Yes. Okay, so the end of day one, they didn't say it, but it's such a great line. The end of day one. Yeah, let me read this. So after a devastating first day at the Battle of Shiloh, where Union forces suffered a major setback, General William Tecumseh Sherman approaches Grant and remarks, "Well, Grant, we've had the devil's own day, haven't we?" Grant, undeterred by the day's losses, replied with quiet confidence, "Yes. Lick 'em tomorrow, though." Grant's leaning against a tree, just smoking a cigar, just looking out over the whole battlefield. You know, what's ahead of him. And this quote highlights Grant's unwavering determination and refusal to be discouraged, even in the face of adversity. Meaning and implications. Lick 'em tomorrow, though. implies that despite the current difficulties, Grant was confident that the Union forces would overcome the Confederates the following day. This quote has become a testament to Grant's leadership and strategic thinking. Broader significance, this quote has resonated throughout history and is often used to exemplify the importance of resilience, Sorry, I jumped ahead. Exemplifies the importance of resilience, perseverance, and maintaining a positive attitude in the face of setback, according to the Little Rock Air Force Base. I was reading at resilience, and then it jumped to attitude and Air Force Base, and I was like, "What's happening?" My eyes just jumped. Yeah, it was just such a great thing because Grant was really kind of concerned with how day one went. Clearly, you saw 10,000 died, 10,000, well, it wasn't day one, but you saw all the death and all that, and it was, yeah. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and end it here. I think they're going to probably, yeah. Yeah, the retreat's going to go into Corinth. I passed by, but I didn't go. I kind of wish I would have went, but there's not a whole lot there. Anyways, we're going to end it here. I got to get more coffee. So I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.